Right, it's Lunch with Caroline Martin. We're talking about fairies, asking, is there any chance that they can exist? It seems, I've got to say, looking at this, that quite a few of you believe that they do. And who's to rule it out? We've got no proof otherwise, have we? Now, you may remember the hoax that my next guest pulled off a few years ago. It was on April Fool's, wasn't it? Dan Bames is a prop designer and made a fairy that he managed to convince everyone was real. Dan, you naughty boy.
Hi there, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, come on, tell me about this fairy that you made then.
Okay, well, back in 2007, I was working in forensics, and I'm also a dabbling artist as well, I was at the time, and I created a mummified fairy. I basically took a small skeleton, covered it in paper mache, stuck it in the airing cupboard, and then overnight looked at it and thought that looks pretty good. So I staged some forensic-style photographs and created a story around it, and I tried to pitch it to the British tabloid newspapers for an April Fool's hoax, but they weren't interested in it at all. They kind of just laughed at it. I then approached the Derby Evening Telegraph with it, because I'm from Derbyshire, and I thought, well, and it is called the Derbyshire Mummified Fairy. They also laughed at it and said no. So in a last-ditch attempt, I sent it through to the About pages, which is owned by the New York Times, and I sent it to them, and they published it overnight, and by the time I woke up the next day, it had gone viral. And literally, the tabloid papers who I'd approached a few days before and the Derby Evening Telegraph were ringing me up, asking me if I was the man who had the mummified fairy, even though I'd spoken to it about them a few days previous. So
there we are then. I mean, there's a lot of people that do believe in this. So, I mean, there must have been excitement from those that thought, finally we have proof.
Well, yeah, it went crazy at first. I really didn't realise how much of a can of worms I had opened. My email account was just maxing out every day. I was getting hundreds and hundreds of emails, all from believers and people from a more new age background, telling me that I need to put the body back and giving me all sorts of advice. And it got to the point where I actually I didn't realise that such a huge amount of people still believed in the concept of fairies, and I actually started to feel very guilty about what I had done. So it was a week later that I actually made a statement and revealed it was an unintentional hoax. It never started out as to go as big as what it actually did. So yeah, I actually revealed it was all a hoax and apologised to quite a few thousand people. Was there a bit of a backlash to that then? There was, yeah. There was a lot of them were quite nice about it. They actually thanked me for opening their eyes again and sort of reigniting some childhood imagination, which is great. I think it kind of does that. It takes you back to a time when you did have beliefs and your views weren't limited by what was around you and what everyone tells you have to believe. So I think in that respect it did some people quite a few favours. On the other hand, I did get quite a few nutcases. You get the odd death threat and stuff, but you take that on the chin and carry on. So I think it was good fun to be in that kind of like childhood thing where you read all this stuff where there are fairies, there are pixies, there's all that going on, and part of you thinks, do they live down my garden? You're out looking for those fairy rings in the garden and in the grass. It's just beautiful to go back to those days of innocence in a way, isn't it? It is, but what you have to remember is that the concept of fairies is part of our heritage, and previous to Christianity coming to the UK, they're actually part of day-to-day life with people in the UK. If you lived out in the woods, then you saw nature spirits, and nature spirits are part of life. We look back at Egyptology now, and their gods have got, dogs' heads and eagles' heads, and we laugh at that. But at the time, that was their belief. And the same thing happens nowadays. Because fairies aren't part of a mainstream belief or religion, it's just laughed at and put to one side as childhood fantasy and something that, it just becomes a joke, when in actual fact, to a lot of people, it is still part of their strong beliefs. And as a result, I don't think that people should laugh at it so much. I think they need to take a step back and look at their own beliefs and look how implausible they are as well.
No, absolutely. Listen, it's been interesting talking to you, Dan, and I'm really glad that we're doing this today because, quite honestly, we are getting such a mixed reaction, and it's great. It's absolutely great. But, Dan, thanks very much for chatting. All right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. That is Dan there, Dan Baines, who did that hoax of that fairy in 2007. Listen, I think that it's beautiful, and I think that it'd be lovely if they did exist, and if they do, then great. And you almost don't want them to be discovered for fear of what will happen if they do exist anyway. Chris in Walsall, good afternoon.